All right, welcome back to the Death Lineup. Brian and I took the week off. We just couldn't figure out how to record last week because our normal Thursday was on Thanksgiving. So we couldn't fit it in, but we're back and we're bringing in a special guest here. Brian Zilem from the Mavs Moneyball SB Nation website here. We wanted to do this before the Mavs game to preview the Mavs Warriors. And then, unfortunately for us, the Mavs won. So now we have to talk about this game after the fact that we lost this game. But no, mostly I want to talk about the Mavs in general because, the Warriors and the Mavericks have a similar issue in that they kind of started slow and record-wise, they're both a bit average right now. But give me your 20-game review so far of the team, how the team has changed since last year, obviously losing Brunson, picking up Wood, and just kind of like your big picture thoughts on are we headed towards a good next 20? Are you worried? Like that whole thing.
I mean, you would think I would be over the moon because Luka is playing at a phenomenal MVP top 5 level, but it's funny because one of the assistant editors of Mavs Moneyball, Josh Bowe, actually wrote an excellent article basically highlighting this team is like made for discourse because the games that are really good, they're good. But then when they're bad, they will lose to the Houston Rockets. And it's just like, what are we doing? Because currently, as recording, they're actually playing the Pistons. They're actually down 1 at halftime, which is really weird. But
Brian's baby Pistons there.
So they're actually 1-7 on the road, and they've had so many weird games this season. So in a way, the Warriors and Mavs are kind of the Spider-Man memes, but in different ways. Because like with the Warriors, I know the starting unit has stunk for you guys, and then you're having the whole thing with Wiseman and trying to figure out Moody and all the young guys. But with the Mavs, like when Luka's in, it's great, but then like when Luka's not in, freaking team falls apart. And then where in a microcosm, Brunson not being there obviously is devastating because really, other than Luka and Spencer Dinwiddie, no one can physically dribble the basketball on this Mavericks team. They'll try to throw out Josh Green, maybe occasionally Tim Hardaway. They recently signed very washed Kemba Walker, which okay, his knee, he literally just had stem cell injections on his knee about 2 years ago. So I can't really see that boding well for his career. They envision maybe getting 8 to 10 minutes a game, but with Jason Kidd, his odd pedantic playing, like you have to earn playing time and you have to play defense. So I'm just trying to process how does that fit into your scheme, because he's having this weird tough love strategy with Christian Wood, which if you look at the numbers, Christian Wood is effectively their second best offensive player, but Jason Kidd refuses to start him because he says, oh, well, he has to earn the minutes and we've got all these talented bigs. That's why they had to waste $15 million on McGee, just because, the Warriors, Looney ended, Looney implanted the seed in the front office. Oh, we got to get bigger. And it's like, no, we actually don't need to waste $15 million on a big that doesn't even play. And it's impressive because the minutes McGee is in, he'll play 8 minutes and somehow he's a -10, which is like impressive. Like he's just very, very bad.
You know what's interesting? I forgot that JaVale was on that team.
Yes.
Because
there goes one of my questions.
Well, the Warriors would probably take JaVale at this point. They would probably take JaVale off your hands, and here's why. If you go back to the when was the last year he was with us? 2019?
Or the year before.
Whatever that year was, he would play the same minutes that you're saying. He would get that 8 to 10 minutes, and they would just have him rim run. And he'd get 2 alley-oop dunks. He'd foul about 5 times, and then he'd be out of the game. But they were highly efficient shots because they didn't expect anything out of him, literally just to run the court, beat the other big down the floor, and catch a lob.
Well, I think that sounds good in theory, Gary, but like there was a possession, or there with a within a minute. I believe this is actually when the Mavericks played Brooklyn, one of their earlier games this season. He essentially gave up 5 points in 45 seconds. That's impressive. Like,
There's also a reason why he's like the best person ever on Shacked into Fool at the same time. Like,
for
this is
sure,
the same guy.
So you have to remember, so he was early 30s. He's now older and just a tad slower. So with the Warriors' defensive kind of woes that they've had, I don't know if he's a beneficial, because right now it's either DeAndre Hunter or DeAndre Jordan or JaVale McGee. Like the worst centers actually getting minutes in the league. I don't know how either of them are getting minutes in an NBA squad right now, but they are. So but yeah, it's just, Matt, and it's funny because with the Mavericks, the idea was like, oh, we're gonna re-sign Jalen Brunson. That obviously didn't happen.
That seemed like it had like no chance of happening. Like the first second he was out.
Well, the family ties,
yeah,
in New York.
Exactly.
Well, and the problem is with that, the Mavericks were, they were humming and hawing, and they didn't want to sign the extension. And by the time they offered the extension, he blew up, and he was like, "No, I'm good." And the Mavericks in their own Maverick way. They were just like, "Oh my God, we can swindle him, get him cheap, and then try to, put him in a deal." That's like the mindset of the front office. But then the Mavericks basically lost him for nothing. And then with Christian Wood, they basically gave a first round pick and spare parts to get him. But the thing about Christian Wood, if the Mavericks don't essentially re-sign him or trade him, they lose all these assets for nothing. When it's like, awesome front office, like, way to go. And I think that's been the biggest contention. I don't know if either one of you follow like Mavs, like Twitter, except myself, but that's been kind of like the biggest boiling point for a lot of the staffers that have Mavs Moneyball. Like, we have this precious like generational talent, and they effectively have not done a good job at all building around him. And it's like, guys, why are you making this so hard? And the Porzingis thing, it sucks. It didn't work out right. Like, a lot of people say, why did they even do it? I understand it to a degree. Would I have given up all the first round picks? Probably not. But I was a believer of Dennis Smith Jr. and Luka never working, so it made sense. And now they have to kind of sit on their hands. A lot of like the mentality this year, they just have to take their lumps this year because they don't have any flexibility cap wise. Luka just, that fresh big money deal is dry. It's official on the cap now. And they can't really make any trades until they relinquish the last pick for the Porzingis deal, which it'll forego after this draft, and then they'll have 3 draft picks to utilize. So their asset management has been it's been piss poor, like pretty much ever since they've got Luka. They gave up Harrison Barnes, former Golden State Warriors, for nothing because they were just trying to chase that Giannis dream, which we knew wasn't going to happen. So just a lot of questions with the front office. I'm not a fan of Jason Kidd. Like, I'm just not. He has this weird habit of number one, he runs. So we went from Rick Carlisle, who was very a micromanager, to like the polar opposite, where it's like Kidd doesn't run any sets. He never calls any timeouts, where it's just like, geez, like I want something a little bit in the middle where it's like, because Lucas is out there just doing stuff sometimes.
Can I give you a little bit of an analogy for
Kidd?
Go
for it.
I think Kidd coaches Luka like he probably wishes he was coach, right? Like, I'm the floor leader, I'm the smartest player on the court. Let me manage and let me do my thing. And he probably thinks that's the best way for them to win, because that game. Now, here's a comparison for you. The Warriors' first championship when they beat Cleveland. So Cleveland loses Kyrie in game 1. And then I think they lose Kevin Love
the series before. Kevin Love.
Kevin Love got his shoulder messed up. And so it became LeBron and a bunch of dudes. That Cavs team in that finals played exactly the way that Luka plays. Like, it's very ball dominant, slow the game down, and you trust your best player to make the one necessary play to get the bucket, whether it's the scoring or the open shot. And so it's very reminiscent of that series. And I guess the question is do you, or do the Dallas hardcores believe that you guys can duplicate what you did last year with this same unit, get to the Western Conference Finals, or even better, right? Like, because that's kind of the thing, is you want to continue to grow and get further. Now, the Warriors are not the same Warriors of last year. I mean, we're looking at Phoenix kind of being the lead dog in the West. Do the fans think that Dallas can actually get there because Luka's having this Superman season?
Man, I think it's kind of like a mixed bag right now, to be honest. I initially projected the Mavs actually to finish worse than they did last year as far as seeding wise. I initially projected them to lose in the first round to the Clippers just because I don't like this team's depth at all. And really, right now, if you look at the advanced stats, the Mavericks are actually like one of the worst in the league in shooting twos because their offense right now currently is like, if they don't hit their threes, they're in trouble. They're in big trouble. And I know we'll go more into the game on Tuesday here in a little bit, but their offense right now is all perimeter based, or Luka save us and go to the rim and get fouled. That's pretty much their offense. And Luka right now is not even shooting that good of a percentage from the charity stripe. I think he's only around it's not even 80%. So we're leaving points on the board there. So, and they're getting killed on the offensive glass too, where they're just giving up all these extra possessions. So they're playing so slow. It actually benefits the other team, because if they're playing so slow and they chunk up a three, they miss, the other team's running to the other side. And a lot of the times, most of these teams are comfortable hitting mid-rangers. And that was like the biggest thing losing Jalen Brunson, because when the offense was fluttering, Jalen would go in there, he would write, guys, I've got this. Let me go in the mid-range. Like the Mavericks they're like afraid to dribble the ball, like past the 3-point line. If they're just like, they will pass up an easy layup and just go for oh, I don't want to do that. It's not a three. So it's very frustrating on how the offense has worked its way out this season. And especially since the Mavericks have lost so many weird games. Like opening night, they blew a 17-point lead. The game against the Warriors, they were up 17-18 the first quarter, which I was like, oh God, I hate these leads in the first quarter. They're just not very good at all. The Mavericks ended up blowing a 16-point lead with 4 minutes left to Oklahoma City, and OKC forced overtime to beat the Mavericks. We're just like, what are we doing? And then you look at all their losses, teams have had missing parts, like critical parts. And for the most part, Maxi Kleber has missed some games here and there. The Mavericks, relatively speaking, have been 100% healthy the entire season. So it's like, you don't have because last year they had their sync with COVID, which is understandable with their kind of slow start, which you don't really have any excuses. You have this Super Saiyan playing for your team, and you're still farting around and losing the teams like the Houston Rockets or the Denver Nuggets when they don't have Joker or Murray playing. It's super frustrating.
Mm-hmm. I have a question. So when I'm looking at guys like Luka and LeBron, guys who can be your best scorer and also your best passer, I would just want to surround those guys with 3-and-D players. And I feel like the Mavericks have done that, where you look at Reggie Bullock, you look at Hardaway Jr., these guys can actually hit threes. But I know that, they said it on the broadcast a lot last night that they weren't really hitting threes all season. But I'm kind of wondering, you said that they haven't really, well, I guess the main narrative is they haven't really paired Luka with the second star, but after his first year, they go get Porzingis. So do you think that the front office might be a little hesitant to package all the picks to go do it again, because they're basically saying look, we already tried and it didn't work? Or do you think who would be your second star, the ideally type of player that you'd want to pair Luka with? Because you're saying that the picks open up again next year?
Yeah. Well, Brian, they don't really have much of a choice, because they have one more swing to make. And if, let's say, the Mavericks underperform this year and don't get out of the first round, then people in Dallas are really gonna they're gonna start getting scared, just because you know how that pendulum swings with these young superstars where they want to win. And relatively speaking, Luka's been pretty like chill on stuff. There hasn't been any like weird like, oh my god, like Dame Lillard type of comments. So he's content, but I think a lot of people forget he's not Dirk. Dirk isn't like Luka's not Dirk. Luka's not like hanging out here for 20 years. That's not happening. So they've got one more chance to go do something. And that's it. That's the move, because the way this team is right now, they're not very good scouting anyway, but they don't have time to draft a guy in the first round and sit there and develop with Luka. Like it's just they don't have that precious time. And I guess that's in a way like the Warriors are kind of struggling with a little bit as well, kind of like trying to figure out placement with Moody and Wiseman. It's really hard to kind of do both at the same time. Like you could maybe try to do it like with one kind of like 3-and-D type player, but when you're trying to do that with like potentially multiple guys, it's really hard. And then when you have these superstars, it's like you want to give them their TLC, but then it's like you can't be like messing around in these games because like the West is wide open, because you only have so many 5 or 6 games mulligans throughout the season. It's like, damn, like how did we lose to Dallas? Like I really wish we had that one back. We'd have home court. So that's a strategy. As far as like I mean, obviously you would love like a Drew Holiday, Herb Jones, like those type of guys. But the thing is like, a lot of like the Mavericks people say, oh, we're waiting for that Drew Holiday trade. Drew Holidays don't grow on trees, and that's the problem. And then effectively the way the NBA trade market is, because of the Minnesota trade that Utah made with Gobert, it's inflated right now. So you're paying 3 draft picks. You might not be even getting like a third. You might get like a top 3, like 4 player, but is it going to be like that Robin potentially, like that Drew Holiday, which you would want? But teams are going to covet those players. Like a team like Milwaukee would just not give that player away. Like, so it would have to be one of those situations where like, a Bradley Beal, does he want out or something like that? I wouldn't even really want Bradley Beal. I would be more comfortable like with a defensive minded player that can dribble a little bit more. That's like selfish, just because like you look at what the freaking Pelicans have, they've got all these plethora of 3-and-D guys. It's like, geez, man, what are you guys doing? And there's players like that out there. It's just the Mavericks front office, as far as like a scouting unit, they just don't really do the work, because I see all these guys. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Kenny Lofton Jr. He's actually on the Grizzlies G League team, and he's the second leading scorer in the G League, actually behind Jaden Hardy, I'm sorry, who the Mavericks actually got in the second round. He's bombing 40, 30 points a game in the G League. And a lot of Dallas fans are advocating, oh, we got to give him in there. But the thing is, you've got the Warriors have had success with Jordan Poole, right? So everybody thinks, that's going to equivalent like, oh, everybody, that'll work out fine for everybody. But the thing is, with Jaden Hardy, he's scoring 40 points a game right now, or I think it's like close to 30. He's bombed 40 points here and there the past couple of weeks, but his playing time is going to be valued. Okay, did he make the 2 or 3 shots he made? And is that really worth putting him on the floor when the Mavericks are in this win now mode?
Yeah.
Okay. And well, I was going to say, if you guys decided to go big game hunting, whether it's this year or next year, there are 2 stars who may very well be available in Anthony Davis and Kevin Durant. Anthony Davis is not a high usage guy. He's a power forward, so he doesn't get to handle the ball. Kevin Durant is a little bit more of a high usage guy, but still he can play without the basketball, because the problem is you don't want Luka to really have to change his game too much around the next player coming in. So you want to find someone who's complementary, but also excellent at a lot of things. Those 2 guys kind of come to mind when I think of, if they really wanted to swing for the fences, like those would be 2 guys to chase. And then you get one of those two guys. Davis has his injury stuff that you will have that just comes with him. Man, you guys are all of a sudden elevated. Now, what would you have to give up? Obviously talking about the future, mortgaging the future, but could you see them ever go big game hunting like that?
I mean, it's potential. I'm just a little squeamish on a big Garrett, especially with Davis's injury history, just because we're coming off Porzingis. We're bringing in no knees, Kemba Walker. So ideally, I would want it specifically just to be a wing, which it's not potentially available. I mean, obviously Durant. The asking price, I mean, yeah, after next year, Dallas could offer 3 first-round picks and Josh Green. I just don't think that's enough. I look at what a team like New Orleans could offer, or even Utah or Cleveland. These teams have like 2 to 3 draft picks and functional assets that they can add as sweeteners. I mean, yeah, you could do pick swaps and stuff like that. So if, let's say, Brooklyn thinks, okay, if we trade Durant now, could something happen and Dallas could just fall apart and stink in 2 or 3 years? Yeah, maybe it's a possibility. But I mean, if you're asking me, would I rather have Durant or Anthony Davis? Yeah, I would go, Durant all day. And even, KD to a degree kind of makes me squeamish a little bit, just because of obviously his injuries. Is he going to be able to be okay if he has one more leg injury? That's a lot of scary stuff to weigh on. And then it's like, okay, we're back at square one and we absolutely have no assets at all now. So we're like, but that's pretty much the situation they're going to be into going forward, because they have to be careful on what they do, because this is it. This is the final mulligan.
Yeah, I feel like whatever like the Jaylen Brown equivalent is, maybe like 2 steps below, that'd be perfect.
Yeah,
Mavericks.
Lovely stuff. I mean, if we could get Jaylen Brown in Dallas, that would be fantastic. And just someone like that. But again, those guys just don't grow on trees. I mean, the upcoming draft class is supposed to have a lot of kiddos. I don't know if the Mavericks are going to be able to get their hands on any of these guys that could be potentially like productive in a couple of years.
Yeah, and I mean, isn't that like you mentioned that Spencer Dinwiddie and Luka Doncic are like the only players who can remotely like dribble the ball on the offense.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings up like Jaden Hardy, who's killing it in the G League right now, 2nd round pick. And, you mentioned like, well, the Mavericks, when they put him in for those 3 minutes, how many shots does he make? That's kind of what you're looking at. But almost like, why wouldn't they just throw him in there to try and build him as a sweetener of a deal? Like just build his trade value so you can include him and Josh Green, and that makes a deal look way better. Because if you look at like the Portland right now with Shaedon Sharpe getting all these playing time because Gary Payton GP2 is like out.
Yep.
Like I'm almost like Shaedon Sharpe can like be a real good asset in a deal, and I feel like that's just because he's getting playing time. Like he's able to go through the bumps and bruises on a team that's still losing as of late. But why I guess why wouldn't they just, because they did it with Josh Green too, right? Josh Green didn't really get those immediate minutes. He's finally, from what it seems like from the outside looking in, is that he's starting to get more trust.
He played
and
well
a lot more playing
Warriors.
time. He played really well against the Warriors.
Well, Brian, it's also taken Josh Green a year and a half to get Jason Kidd's trust, and that's the problem. And then another thing with rookies, the Mavericks don't run sets, and generally speaking, unless you've got, let's say, like a burner like Ivy, like the Pistons have, like that guy's a freaking flash. Like you can only do so much like rec league ball with a lot of these guys, because to a degree, it's okay to have structure, like set up something for these guys so they know what they're doing. Because with Kidd, he is so like in his ways where if you mess up that one defensive play, like you're not playing the rest of the game. So it's like exactly what you said, Brian. It makes totally sense to build up their equity. But if Kidd is going to be so stubborn, because like we can't really build up Christian Wood's like stock at all, because there's games where Kidd doesn't play him, or like he's at, or let's say he doesn't play him, but he won't start him. And it's been a struggle to get Christian Wood more than 30 minutes a game. And it's like, what are we doing here now? Christian Wood's defense has been spotty, but he's also been in these weird lineups where it's like Dwight Powell, Davis Bertans, who has no knees at all, where it's like, come on, like put him in like with a better defensive unit and see what he can do. But yeah, Josh Green on the 4th quarter on Tuesday, phenomenal. I could not believe Luka got that pass to him, which was just crazy. And I think he also made this insane jump past Maxi Kleba. I think that was also in the fourth quarter as well.
Mm-hmm. I feel like if we like go to this past game, and I admittedly haven't seen as much Mavericks basketball this year. I think I only watched that one Pelicans game that was maybe on TNT or ESPN, one of the two.
Also
and
lost
if
that
like
game.
Yeah. And so like me not watching much Mavericks, I don't know how much Warriors you're able to watch, but if I'm basing my opinions off of one game, which obviously is just not the correct answer here, but if I am, like, I would say the shooters look amazing. Christian Wood looked like crud in my opinion against that game. I feel like the Warriors,
every time he took a jump shot, I was so happy.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah,
I was like, thank you, Jesus.
Well, it's funny because that was the first game Tim Hardaway was actually functional, because there was like this period where he was in a bad way, where he was in the stretch for about 3 or 4 games. He was like 0 for 15, something crazy from 3. So that was like the game he finally decided to come out of his shell. Reggie Bullock has been bad, but he also started slow last year. I believe in Reggie. I feel like he can get out there, but also a lot of people don't remember. Like, if you go back and look at these stats, I think they're out there, but Dorian Finney-Smith and Reggie Bullock were like accumulated the most miles in like the NBA, like in the NBA playoffs, like compared to anybody else. So a part of me wonders, like, God, are these guys already thrashed because they just they were so good in the playoffs, and especially in that Sun series, and it's weird because you look at their movements now, they're not doing the same stuff that they were doing like earlier in the season. It's like, wait a minute. Like, what happened? Like, not because I've heard the excuse, oh, we're trying to like integrate new players. I'm just like, no, we're not. Like, we have like one new player in McGee. So like, these are bigs that don't really have any like ultimate, they're not dribbling the ball. They're not catch and shoot guys. So I don't really understand how that makes any sense. So the scheme hasn't really changed. Now, one of their assistant coaches that drew up a lot of plays, he's now in Brooklyn. So that's obviously hurt a little bit on the strategy standpoint. But the Mavericks as a unit have not changed, other than, losing Brunson. But like, fundamentally, the scheme should still be the same. Like, there's not a lot of switching. They're getting absolutely just drummed on the boards as well, where there's a lot of standing around. And with Luka, there will be those moments where he'll throw up a shot and he'll look around, expect a foul, and then just, he'll give up that transition, play just because he's mad. He's gotten his share of tees. I feel like he's hopefully will eventually get better with that, but a lot of, people who follow stats within the Ringer, I read a lot of stuff on him, thinking, oh, well, the Mavericks will buck this trend eventually. But it's like, brother, we're 20 games in. We got to start bucking, or we're going to get bucked out of the playoffs at this point, just because the West is wide open, fellas. And that's the thing.
Agreed, 100%.
That's why a lot of Mavs fans are very, upset about what's going on, because it's funny. Of course, the Mavericks are down 7 in Detroit right now, which, like, how do you, like, it's very frustrating that they're willing to rise up for Steph Curry, or like, there's these weird quirks where it was the Warriors and it was the Mavericks were wearing their city jerseys. So I was like, okay, Luka's gonna be in asshole mode tonight, where it's like, okay, we got this. Where it's like, but if you look up the stats, those games where Luka doesn't score at least like 25 points, the Mavericks have lost each game, which, like, guys, like, we got to stop doing this. And
I'm pressure.
I know I'm going on, so I'm sorry if I'm throwing off y'all's flow.
I got one more thing, Brian. Do you have one more thing you want to add on?
Just
right now?
really quick, like, just to back up my Pistons just for a second here. They don't really get blown out that much.
Wait, I just saw the Knicks the other day.
Okay, they beat the fully healthy. They beat the fully healthy Nuggets. They beat almost fully healthy Utah Jazz. Like, they just kind of stick in a game, and 5 times they'll win it, and then the other 20 times they'll lose it.
That Detroit game against the Knicks was so bad. The Inside the NBA guys just did it in fast forward, and they did the little song. And Shaq says, "Kenny has Kenny do the Benny Hill song or whatever. That was bad. So
I think Ivy's hurt.
Yeah.
I'll pin it to that, and then Cade's obviously not.
All right, so I got one more question, and then I'll show. For the YouTube folks, this will be better, but I'll show a couple of photos that Brian, both Brians will enjoy relating to this Dallas team. Okay, so last thing we mentioned at the beginning that the Warriors and the Mavericks, like numbers wise, crappy away teams,
Yes,
great home teams, but their style of play is vastly different. The Mavs, I think, are last in the league in pace, and the Warriors are second just to the Lakers. The Lakers really pay at that fast of a pace. I guess when LeBron's out, that's all they can do is run. But that style of NBA where it's all about pace. You want to get as much shots as possible. You want to create as many opportunities as possible. You want to speed up the game. And Dallas has gone the other way. Like, again, my comparison to that 2015 Cavs team, it is almost an era behind in basketball, the way that you guys play. Very dominant guy. Ultimately, do you think that you guys can win? Because Luka was great against the Warriors in the conference finals too. And I think the difference in that series was just the Warriors had a couple of other guys who would step up, and the Mavs were relying on guys who would be sort of good one game, then bad the next game, and weren't able to be consistent. But can you guys win like that? Can you guys get to the NBA Finals playing that kind of basketball?
No, I don't think so. I could see right now, based on this roster, they could definitely win a series with Luka doing his thing. But at some point, you're going to run into a squad that has, similar to the Warriors, where they were just clicking. They've got all these different wings, movable people that can switch, like, Draymond and Wiggins and then, Peyton, they were all great throughout the, conference finals. And then when Luka is getting like doubled and triple teamed and he's not getting his calls, how is he going to do? Just because I wanted to just share this story real quick. A few weeks back, there was this, Jason Kidd was worried that Luka may not make it to the Christmas at this point because his usage is so high. But it's like, you're the one playing him 45 minutes a game. Yeah. So to what you were saying, yes, the Mavericks are playing the slowest in the league, but Luka's also, his minutes are like up there.
Yeah, he's like 37 minutes a game.
And that's like my biggest worry, just because, they're slow. If I can use a Michael Coleism for our wrestling fans out there, slow and methodical. But if he's effectively playing like 5 or 6 minutes more than Steph or Clay, is that really worth it? And just because the offense will just be a sludge. I mean, when Luke is in his bag, he hasn't really, the only thing he hasn't done this season is make his threes. He's starting to kind of gradually do that. I mean, when he's making his threes, like, good luck. I mean, like, I feel bad whoever has to guard him. So effectively, if he has to, score 50 points a game in a playoff series, I don't really feel great about that. But they could easily win a series. I just don't think that right now with this current roster, there's no upward mobility, because you look at even like with the Warriors to a degree, there's always roster turnover with the Warriors, right? They're always looking to pick up new guys, different people, stuff like that. Effectively, Dwight Powell's been with Mavericks for a decade. It's like, God, man, like, we can't really look at anything different. And, the front office wise, the Mavericks are kind of a mess anyway, but it's just like, why can't we like shake up the roster? Because like roster shakeup is okay, even if you have like star players.
Yeah. All right. I'll end it with this, which is, Charles Barkley is not the guy who you look to for NBA strategy these days. He's very old school, but he made a very good point after the game on Tuesday night, in which the Mavericks won. He said that his realization coming out of that game is Luka scores in such a difficult fashion, and the Warriors are able to create open shots because of the style of play, because of the plays that they run. And so if those easy shots that the Warriors get, the Mavs aren't getting those, and that could be sort of a difference in a close game. So I thought that was a really good point. And then the last thing is I'm no Mavericks fan. I I come from the DNA of the We Believe Warriors. Obviously, that was not a happy time for the Mavericks. But you guys did get your championship, and I just hope, Mark Cuban, rich guy owner, also, really sort of advanced in basketball back in the day with the analytics and stuff. He needs to take a shot, man. The fact that you guys don't have or aren't able to bring a second guy next to Luka, and it may happen through free agency. We talked about Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown is a free agent after this year, so it's time to chase, because you don't want to waste Luka's prime, and I know he's there for 5 more years. I think his contract kicked in this year, but you know how the NBA works, where guys get frustrated and they try and get out, and their agents try and get them out. I'm not saying that's going to happen to Luka, but you also have to make that star happy at the same time.
Yeah. And I was going to say, Garrett, like with Cuban overall, he's not been willing to be comfortable paying the luxury tax. Like, like the example, the Warriors, there's been this running gag for, over a decade since the Mavericks won the title. Like keep the powder dry. That's been Cuban, like that floated out there, and that makes me cringe every time I hear it. And it's like, ever since the Mavericks won that won the title, Cuban's thought process has been like, oh, I'm going to outsmart everybody, get ahead of these analytics, the CBA. Like, I know what I'm doing, but it's like, it's Groundhog Day. Every offseason, we're doing the exact same thing. And somehow they lucked into this generational superstar. And it's like, God, you're potentially going to F this up because you have not learned from your lessons from a decade ago.
All right. So now I'll share these photos. The first one is when I played fake pickup with JaVale McGee.
What?
We did something for Nextdoor, for my company Nextdoor, and JaVale came out to shoot some photos and stuff. He was kind of by himself shooting threes from the corner and like missing most of them. But we did get to like play around with him and play a little pickup.
Is that the court in Mission Bay?
Yes.
Interesting.
Oh, I walk by that court all the time.
Yes, it was fun. It was back when I could actually get up and down the court, which is not happening very much these days. All right, second one is this picture is probably like 7 years old.
I think I know which one. Yeah.
J Kidd, baby. J
Nice.
Kidd came into our office. He knows one of my co-founders very well, and he came in to hang out. This was before. This would have been before he even went back to the Lakers, because I know he
got the Bucks thing on.
Yeah, so he was. Yeah, I think he was just out at Milwaukee, or he was close to being out at Milwaukee, because I know he was trying to go back to Cal and do some stuff with the college and such. But yeah, so he came by the office and he wanted. We had a little mini hoop, like a little plastic toy hoop in our office, and he's like, let's take a picture. And I'm like, all right. Like, I just wanted like the homie picture with him. He's like, how about you pretend like you're dunking on me? I was like, no, I don't want to dunk on Jason Kidd. I just want to be like, pretend like we're friends.
Dang.
All right. Hey, Brian, thanks a lot for hanging out with us. Really appreciate it. And look, if the Warriors play the Mavericks again in the playoffs, I think it'll be a lot of fun. But I don't know. We're both kind of vying for the same spots right now. We got to move up some slots in order to play each other again.
Yeah, like let's just like get above 500. Like that's the goal for both teams. Let's get above 500.
There you go. All right, thanks to Brian Zilem, and you can find him at Brian Zilem on Twitter and read his Mavs stuff on MavsMoneyball.com. He wrote the preview for today's game, in which are the Mavs still losing?
The Mavs are actually down double digits.
Oh no!
It's Killian Hayes game.
What's that?
I got to check my fantasy. I got Killian Hayes.
Yeah. Somehow the Mavericks are now down double digits going into the fourth quarter. And then fourth quarters, that's where Luka always gets his rest. But watch Kidd just play him the entire time. So good stuff.
All right, Brian. Thanks a lot.
Game.
Okay. Take care.
Later.
All right,
I had so many
Bri.
more questions.
You had more questions. You had more.
I had way more.
You were there with the. You've been checking out your Mavs and reading up on your Mavs. The Mavs are a very interesting team. I mean, like, you're on the other side of Luka. It's not fun.
I just remember that in the Western Conference Finals, like it seemed like a focal point for us. Not it seemed like it was pretty. It was you could totally see it in real time. Was that we were just like Miles Powell and Kleba cannot block our shots.
Yep.
We're just going to attack you every single time. So that's what I thought the idea with getting JaVale McGee was. It's like, okay, we have an option to at least deter teams from attacking us. But now he's not getting minutes. So I'm just wondering, it's just like the same old team.
Well,
essentially.
Yeah, it's the same old team except for they have Christian Wood. They don't have Brunson. And I don't know. I feel like the Warriors could still figure something out for JaVale for whatever the Wiseman minutes were at this point. But I don't know if they would change the way that they're doing it now because they figured out how to use Draymond and Looney apart and together, and that kind of takes up all the center minutes. But I do get worried that Draymond is playing probably more center than they want him to play, and then that could cause
that was
that
was my thing in the beginning of the year. I just didn't want him playing that much backup five, him and JaMychal Green, because when you're playing small ball five and these bigs are just backing you down every single possession, that takes a toll. And you saw it with Draymond last year with his back.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think that it's like a calf thing and then a back
and then
thing.
It turned into a back. Yeah. I think that's definitely because of playing small ball five. I'm convinced.
All right. So the last time we recorded, they were under 500. And now they are exactly 500 at 11-11. I think they're 8-4 in their last 12 games. Their defensive metrics are coming back up. Still, the defensive metrics aren't fantastic. Offensive rating, the Warriors are 8th in the NBA. Defensive rating, they are 21st in the NBA. So they still have some work to do there. But the analytics and the statistics are actually looking better in these last 10 to 12 games. Eye test wise, does it seem to you that they have figured some things out and are sort of on that trajectory back to being the team who we expected them to be? Or do you still see some holes there in the armor?
I think that I thought what was interesting against the Mavericks game is that one, the starters kind of sucked, right? It was like the bench that was like completely being better than they ever have. But I think what's stopping me from saying like, oh, I totally think they're on the right trajectory was that I think it was the third quarter or the second quarter. Like you look at the foul count, it just looked like the early beginning of the year, how they would just foul too much and make dumb fouls. So I think if they win last night or not, was it last night or 2 nights ago?
Tuesday.
2 nights ago, huh? 2 nights ago. If they'd win that and then they don't have those stupid fouls, like I'd be much more confident in saying, yeah, second seed, third seed. But I think there's still a couple more things they need to figure out. And I think Moses Moody would be a big part of that because it seems like they've unlocked JK.
Yes, Jonathan Kuminga has looked really good. And
do you remember me saying that on the podcast or at least in our text thread? I was like, 5 games ago, I was like, do you guys see what this guy's doing in like 5 minutes? Like, get this guy playing time.
Yeah. Okay. But the thing about it is he's a young player.
Yeah, I know what you're gonna say.
And he is going against his instincts to play in the way that he's playing. Like you could see when he gets the ball, he's thinking, oh, I want to go to the hole. And then he's got to remind himself, no, I got to do this and that. And like he's learning it, and he's so young that I enjoy, like you, I enjoy watching him sort of have these, like this is how it happens. And he was really good in that Dallas game. Now he did miss 3 free throws that possibly could have helped him get a little closer. But the thing, ultimately, the more minutes he gets means the more trust that he has with his coaches. And, Brian just talked about kids' trust factor here. Like, if you listen to Plus Minus, Warriors Plus Minus yesterday, they were just like, yeah, like, Steve Kerr says you cannot turn the ball over and you cannot foul. And if you do those things, you are out of the game. It's like, I'm not trying to turn the ball over. No, I'm not trying to foul. It doesn't matter. You didn't do what I said. You're out of the game. They said it like that to make it funny, but for young players, and they talked about this 2 timeline thing. Imagine if if you were just, and this is kind of what happened to Steph. You probably don't remember this because you were so young, but when Steph was a rookie and in his second year, I forget who the Warriors coach was at the time. It'll come to me. Because Don Nelson drafted him. Don Nelson was gone a little while, but he would have whoever was Don Nelson's lead assistant, I think, took over the team. And Steph was coming out of games in the fourth quarter, probably because he was turning the ball over and committing fouls. And so imagine if if they would have given Steph those reps back then, and maybe he kicks it in, sooner than that. So that's something that I kind of, in the back of my mind, I'm like, I get it. Like, we want these guys to understand, and the way that they understand is you punish is a strong word, but you kind of give them reps when they're playing well, and you take them away when they're not. I understand that. But if you don't have the patience for Moses Moody to make 1 or 2 mistakes and then he sits for 5 games, like, what is that doing for his ability to help you down the line? Anthony Lamb is good for what they're doing, but I feel like in the second half of the season, these teams are going to be like, okay, we know exactly what Anthony Lamb is doing. We're going to stop it. Boom. He's not going to be helpful. We know how to guard. Like, it's just, you can just see that Moses Moody is so much more talented than Anthony Lamb. But that's not a discredit to Anthony Lamb, because he's playing solid. I wouldn't say he's playing well, but those are the things that really worry me. Is when you have these timelines, every second we take away from Moody and from Kuminga, that is a lack of investment into their future. And I get why they're doing it. I get why they don't think that they can afford to do it. But at the same time, like, how much are you killing these guys mentally and emotionally? And, not that, I don't know if you can ruin a player, but
Yeah.
that's the fear for me. And maybe it's just these guys, maybe they're just going to be more mentally tough, and they're going to get better. And this is all like going to be like a fun experiment that we look back on fondly. But that is my worry, especially with those guys.
Kawakami said it. I think it was him or Marcus, was like, if you're not developing and you're losing, that's like the worst thing for this team. Like that stretch of games where they lost against Detroit, lost against Orlando, lost against, you start naming that road trip,
Charlotte.
Like Kuminga and Moody weren't really getting minutes, and that was like the epitome of, you're not developing and you're not winning. But at least, Kuminga's getting run now. But I think I've said it every single podcast that I still don't get why Moses isn't getting playing time, because even if he has those mistakes, it's still like important from all aspects of the game. Moody at his best will be like your 8th best player on a team, like that's Moody at his
he's
best,
in the rotation.
He's in the rotation. Moody playing is ideally raising his trade value if you decide to go that route, if you want to do all the young guys for the big name player.
I'm so happy you mentioned trades, by the way.
Yeah, I just think that Moody's got to play. I was actually talking with Jay when Kerr was saying that Moody was turning the ball over, and it didn't feel like his turnover stats were that high. I feel like Kerr was talking about, when Moody goes on a drive and he's not really like the most skilled person, not the most skilled athlete, doesn't have the nicest touch around the rim, sometimes has flashes, when he just kind of drives and goes up and he's like, oh my God, what am I going to do now that I'm up here? Like, that's almost like a turnover. Him just like putting up a dumb shot or just getting blocked. Like, that's like, I think that might be what Kerr's maybe alluding to. But I mean, when they drafted Moody and Kuminga, it was like, okay, Kuminga's the project, Moody's the pro ready guy, because he's like a 3-and-D, doesn't really need to do much. And I just think it's very intriguing how that we kept flipping that narrative maybe like every 20 games last year. And then now it's like, it's back to Kuminga was the ready guy, and Moody's still like the project. I'm just interested on how they're going to continue to tackle this, because I think they're doing it wrong right now. That would be my take, is they're doing it wrong.
Do you think there's going to be a story that comes out at some point where in the off season, whether it's coaching or whether it's somebody from the outside was like, Moses, here's what you need to do to take it into season 2. A, you need to shoot more. B, you need to take it to the hole more. C, you need to look for yours. And he took that into this season because, like you said, he was like the pro-ready guy and got run in these Western Conference Finals that we were talking to Brian about. And then he comes into this season, and he, like, I thought in the preseason, I was like, he looks good. You know, he looks solid. He looks like he's ready to go. And like, he's not the best athlete, like you said. But then very soon we found out that something was not jiving with him, and they haven't really said what it was, other than Kawakami mentioning on the podcast that, you know, there's some stuff that he does when it comes to, you know, not passing, not running the play correctly, not finding the guy, not moving the ball, kind of holding it for that extra split second, which screws everything up. Like, where does that come from? Because we didn't hear those things about him last year. So was it just a this year thing? Or is it like, oh, no, he should be way better at this than he is now? We cannot accept him being just as good as he was last year.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, I'd be right. We don't really know what's going on behind the scenes, so all we could do is speculate and guess. But I wouldn't be surprised if it is something like that because of how intricate the Warriors' offense is, where it's like you still see like guys who know it well. It's like, oh my God, Steph, I forgot I have the off-ball screen for Steph right here. So I wouldn't be surprised if like a young mind, it's obviously going to take a lot because I think you even said like 2 weeks ago, like imagine if we were at a Warriors practice facility and we got to see some of their sets. It's like our knowledge would be like blown away, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I feel like a little side tangent here. You know how sometimes the agents, when it comes to the draft process, they want to withhold their players' medicals because they don't want their player going to a specific team. I think if I was like Wiseman's agent at the time, you know, not knowing what we know now, I'd be like, oh yeah, like I would love for my player to go to the Warriors. Look at what they've done with these guys. And now we're at this time, now they've drafted Wiseman, Kuminga, Moody, Baldwin. But I mean, let's just go with the top guys. Wiseman, Kuminga, Moody. After seeing how this has been handled, and I'm not saying it's been handled like this whole time the wrong way. I think it's being handled the wrong way at this moment, but not the whole time. If I'm an agent and the Warriors have another option to get another top guy, I'm like directing my guy away from Golden State not because I don't think he will become a good player. I think them being here is not allowing them to get like the best deal they could get in their first when they're eligible to get that extension. Because I know we always talk about it, but you look at Jalen Green, a guy who's getting the bumps and bruises every single game of being able to just go do whatever the hell he wants. He's like in line for like a crazy contract or a crazy extension when he's eligible. Kuminga's not getting that, right? Like there's just no way, even with just how the Warriors contract situation is looking like right now. Like he won't get it because of that. And two, he hasn't been playing like it because he hasn't been able to play. He hasn't been able to get those bumps and bruises that you need as a rookie that Shaedon Sharp's able to get right now, you know? So if I'm an agent, I'm like, I don't want the Warriors trying to do this 2 timeline thing with my player anymore.
Well, they kind of, in order to get those picks that they did, Steph had to get hurt, right? Yeah. He had to get hurt. And then they just bottom out. And then in the second one, they made that great trade with Minnesota, which enabled them to get that pick. And so those were just like circumstances that
this won't happen again. This 2 timeline thing with this group, like it won't happen again. But I'm just like,
I mean, if the seasons go well over the next couple seasons, the Warriors will have a pick in the 20s, and that it'll be more like the Baldwin and the Ryan Rollins thing rather than the Kuminga and the Wiseman and the Moody thing. So, but you know, if things don't work out well, then they may have to do this again with an even older team. Okay, couple things. Have you been watching any Damian Lee?
Yeah, kind of. I probably caught like 4 Suns games. He's like the 6th man.
D-Lee is balling. Like he doesn't have like crazy stats. Like he's not like shooting. Like he doesn't shoot that much. But I was like, man, if we had Damian Lee on this Warriors team, like all the stuff would be fixed.
He wouldn't. The Suns' offense, I feel like, is like everyone get on the perimeter, and Book's going to try to do something, and if he can't, he's going to kick it to you. And if you don't have the open shot, then you're going to dribble a little bit and kick it back to someone. Like all those guys on that entire roster, except for like positions 1 through 4, except for like, you know, Ayton and Biyombo. Like you look at them, and they're pretty much all guys who can shoot a 3 and like dribble a little bit, right? That's what the Mavericks are struggling with, having no other guys
it's all driving kick.
Like the Suns have just their whole rosters. Like you look at Torrey Craig, you look at Mikal Bridges, you look at all these guys. They could essentially Cameron Payne. They could dribble the ball. It's kind of an interesting way because I know that's what the OKC Thunder are trying to do right now too. Get all guys who could shoot, dribble, and pass. I think it's team building is so interesting.
So I was doing a little scouting for the Bulls, and I was like, oh, who'd the Bulls play last? And it was the Suns. And so I was like, oh, wow. And then I realized, like, oh, this is a game that Book had like 50 points. And so I watched like 2.5, 3/4 of the game. And gosh, their offense moved. And this is without CP, right? CP may be a little bit more of a ball stopper, but because he likes to play a little bit slower. But, Booker and Booker, even though Cameron Payne is the point guard, Booker's kind of running the show, and they play fast and they're getting shots up, and Booker is finishing like kind of like how Steph finishes, where you're like, is he really going to get to that hole? And then like everything is like a perfect finish, and you're sort of surprised when he misses at the rim. That's what Booker is right now. And he's got that nice fadeaway. He's got the mid range. He is playing fantastic basketball. And I was like looking at the West because, Brian said the West is wide open. And I do think it is, because there's a lot of teams in there that are teams that have been kind of on the cusp. We talked about the Grizzlies, the Suns themselves, the Denver Nuggets. There's a Pelicans team that's kind of sitting out there, and I know Zion is, not going to play the next 60 games. He's probably going to get hurt at some point and miss some time.
Jeez.
That's just the way his career goes, like, right? Like he's not a dependable guy to just go, okay, he's an Iron Man. He's playing every single game from here on out. He's going to have a foot.
Well, no star player does, right? I wonder what the average games played for a star player is these days, like 65, 70?
Kevon Looney, man.
Star player.
Come on.
Maybe I have to say superstar, because Kevon's a star in our book.
But okay, so let's look at the West. So Phoenix.
I think like while you were like, the reason I think that point is made a lot is because, I think I said it either in the pod or in our text thread, just a couple days ago, the Warriors are in 10th place, but 3 games out of first, right? Yeah. You look at the East, and I don't know it off the top of my head, but I've got to guess that Boston and Milwaukee have just gained this insane lead among whoever the 8th seed is, right? Like it'd probably take like 8 to 9 games to get to first.
Yeah,
unless you have the standings.
Boston is 18-4. They're clearly heads and shoulders above the rest of the teams in the NBA right now.
Those 2 teams, I think, are heads and shoulders. And
the Celtics 18-4, Bucks 15-5, Phoenix 15-6. Then the Cavs are 14-8. We saw the Cavs, and you can't just base it off of one game, but I kind of think that the difference between the Celtics and the Cavs is kind of a wide margin at this point.
The Cavs beat the Celtics the 2 times they played each other.
I know.
I almost think what we talked about on our pod, and I know we'll get back to the Warriors right here in a second. I almost feel like the Cavs are good matchups against the Bucks and the Celtics.
Yeah, because they're so long.
They're so big.
They're long, and they're athletic, and
they have the 2 really small guards. Like they have the 2 really small guards and the 2 insanely huge bigs.
Yeah,
and they're all they need.
They need to be able to shoot, right? If they can shoot, there's going to be some clutch games there where, butt cheeks get a little tight for a young team. They're going to go through that, right? Like that's just how it works in the NBA. You don't just get to be nothing and then be great. Like you have to kind of go through the whole thing.
You have to get butt cheeks. You have to get butt cheeks to overcome butt cheeks.
You do. Okay, so Phoenix 15-6, Nuggets 14-7, Pelicans 13-8, Memphis 12-9. Memphis, I'm actually kind of disappointed in Memphis. I thought they were going to kind of take control this year. And they're still a good team, but I know they have guys out a lot. Bane's been out. Clippers 13-10, Sacramento, who beat the bumps off of the Pacers last night, 11-9, and then you have the Jazz at 13-11. I would expect the Jazz to kind of fall out there. Mavericks 10-10, Warriors 11-11, Minnesota 11-11. Minnesota actually played well without Cat the other day, so that was pretty interesting.
Yep.
And Portland 11-11, Oklahoma 9-13, Lakers 8-12, Spurs 6-16, Rockets 5-16. Okay, so I said that to basically say I think there's something special with this Phoenix team. And
Mm.
I don't know if it's the fact that they went to the finals 2 years ago and they were on the cusp, right? Then Milwaukee came back to win those last 2 games, I think it was. And then last year they went through the disappointment of losing to Dallas, right? We were kind of making fun of us because that's the team that we were like secretly scared of, right? Was Phoenix. And then they lose to Dallas and you're like, "Oh, like maybe they're not as good as we thought." And I feel like this year's Suns team is like back for blood. They play well without CP. I'm not even, I'm sure he is good for that team, but I don't know, man. I like the way that they played. Now they were only
Mhm.
playing the Bulls. The Bulls are no great shakes in any way. But yeah, I like the way that they played, and maybe the West isn't necessarily completely up for grabs. Maybe they are a little bit head and shoulders above the rest. But I look at that team because I'm always looking at like, if I'm the Warriors, who am I worried about playing, or who am I scared to play? And I'm scared to play Phoenix, and we saw they beat the crap out of us 2 times.
I know this kind of goes against your point of the teams that haven't really faced the butt cheeks yet, but I'd be scared of New Orleans.
Well, we haven't seen them because they were on the back end of a back-to-back and in New Orleans, so the Steve Kerr just rested all of his guys. I am I like a lot of players on that team. I just kind of want to see them in a big game where things matter against a veteran team, and that would
Mhm.
be the Warriors, right? Because the Warriors are going to slow that game down and they're going to make it really, a possession important game. But then that's another team that I'm looking at as like, wow, like these guys are athletic and they match up really well against the Warriors, but they don't have those reps yet. But they're going to be. I don't even know if they need to make a move, like because people are saying that they could even make move. I'm like, I don't know. I kind of like their starting lineup. They
I think
got
the Pelicans are a team that, excuse my French, I think they can like maybe not excuse my French. I don't think I'm going to cuss here. I think they could like beat the crud out of the Warriors, like just like kind of, break them down, but the Warriors will eventually win that series, but that'll
Mhm.
make them in worse shape for the next series. I think they're that team because they did that to the Suns last year. The Suns, I think they went to 6. And the Suns were, that was a hard series for them to pull out, and they go and lose to the Mavericks the next series in 7. I feel like that's still kind of the Pelicans' way. Maybe they'll win a series, but then they'll rough up those teams for when they go to the next series. They're a little beaten up a little bit. I still like their team a lot though, and they got the Lakers pick this year. Woo!
Yeah, that's gonna be a good one, probably. Okay, so I'm going to rank my 3 teams in order of how scared I am to play them, and I want to hear yours.
I got to pull them up the teams
I'm
again.
not gonna have your Denver Nuggets in there, by the way. You may
I
be
don't
scared of
blame
them.
you.
I'm
I'm
not
not.
scared of them. All right, number 1 for me, Phoenix. Number 2, Memphis, and number 3. I'm sorry, yeah, number 2, Memphis. Number 3, New Orleans. And after that, I'm not scared of any of the rest of the teams. I'm not. I think the Warriors just match up well against Denver, no matter how great Jokic is against them. The
Mhm.
Clippers, they. How can they create any sort of identity when they can never have their full team out there? The Kings are fun, but they're not going to be playing any sort of defense when it matters because again, they don't have the reps, but they're really fun to watch. Like I said, the Jazz are going downhill. I would actually put the Mavericks probably 4th and the Clippers 5th there if we made it 5. But yeah, those are my 3. Who are your 3?
Um, I get why you say Phoenix. I just feel like they might be a regular season team. I think that my whole take on just the NBA, how teams should approach the NBA in general, is like if you're a team that's supposed to be contending, and if you fall short, um, and you don't at least make it to the finals or win the finals, my whole thing is like, okay, how are you going to respond? What are you going to do in the free agency? Are you going to, push it towards, okay, my team's young, it was their first experience in the playoffs, like they just need more reps in that environment and they'll get better. Like you could look at the Celtics and say that first time in the finals, maybe they added Brogdon, but they didn't really add anything else. That's probably fine for them because now Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown have that experience and they might be able to improve off of that, and they're still really young. But for Phoenix, you could semi make the same argument, but CP's aging. DeAndre Ayton doesn't want to be there from all we know. I mean, he looks kind of happy now, but he literally signed a deal with another team to not be there. I'm just like, they didn't do anything they got worse, in my opinion. And they look good, but I mean, their regular season record last year, I think the pace at this point, they were probably ahead of their record right now. But they lose JaVale McGee, Jay Crowder's not playing. And this year they got Damian Lee and Jock Landale. Like, I don't believe, if this team didn't get there last year, I don't see what has changed for them to do it again this year. There were rumblings that, at least internally, that I think we heard from Plus Minus or reading an article, that the Warriors were secretly like, we know we're going to beat the crud out of this Suns team if they make it here. So, like, I don't know if that's just them saying that because they could say that because the Suns lost and they were just like, well, we don't have to see him, so we might as well just say it. But I believe them. I think that the Warriors are just, I don't know, CP can never get it done against them. That's a thing, right? So I don't know if I'm totally scared of the Suns, because I was scared of them last year, and then I see that what they do, and then, you know, they beat us twice this year. I would probably go. I applaud you for just being continually right about this Clippers team, but I still think that fully healthy, I would just be scared of them. And I know you said they haven't formed an identity, but just Paul George and Kawhi on the same team, and Kawhi's played like what, 5 of 20 games this year. And
a lot of people like that team. Charles Barkley still is riding with the Clippers. You know, when you have a Batum and a Powell, guys like
they
that,
have all the right pieces. I feel like they're just like kind of older.
I don't think they're athletic enough.
Yeah, because they're old.
That's
like
the thing.
Covington.
Because when we played the Clippers, now obviously they didn't have all their guys, and it's not like we killed them in any way. But you know who's playing really well is Zubac.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
he is.
He had like almost 30 rebounds the other day.
But
I
just would. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Go. Sorry.
No, but I mean, you know, he's a good player. The Warriors would try and figure out how to
take him off the floor.
And just make him less important. But a lot of their role players are of the guys you don't mind taking a big shot because they're comfortable taking. But I'm not sure you're comfortable with them getting isolated on the perimeter in late in the game either. So that's one thing is, you know, it's good to have the depth, but some of it is older depth and could get, you know, they could get exposed a little bit. But it's okay. So
when healthy,
are you saying that they're your number one?
They would probably be my number one when healthy. I just think of them as like the way the Memphis Grizzlies made us feel uncomfortable by their defense, made the offense feel uncomfortable. I think the Clippers could replicate that, and the Clippers have the steady offense with those two guys to take the shots. Like, I would just be scared of them the most. I think the Warriors could get it done, but I think they would be my number one. I'd probably go. I'll go Phoenix 2, Memphis 3.
I like it. All right, we'll get out of here at this right now. But I wanted to run, not that I need to run this by you because I think you already laughed at it. But Bill Simmons said the Warriors should go after Alex Caruso, because the Bulls are not playing well. They're probably not going to get Lonzo back. They are. What is their record here? The Bulls are currently 9-12. And the Warriors, they come into town tomorrow. So the Warriors play the Bulls tomorrow. And watching that Phoenix game, I think the Warriors should be able to do a lot of the same stuff that Phoenix did, was just continuously moving and creating good shots. And, you know, DeRozan's getting pissed off at guys for not getting back on defense and all kinds of stuff like that. And you know, who's their center? Vucevic, just a bad fit. If I was Bulls fans, I would be so mad. I'd rather have Wendell Carter. Like, Wendell Carter fits better in basketball today than I said that when they traded for him. I was like, nope, that's not the right move. Carter's going to be better.
Profit you. Look at you.
Because I have a Bulls fan friend who we were in a text thing, and I was like, I've seen what the Warriors do to Vucevic. Vucevic is going to get his points and his rebounds. He's just 20 points, 10 rebounds. That's just his game. And then the Warriors just run circles around him on offense.
Yeah.
And like it's just not how you win today. So I think the Warriors should do well tomorrow night, as long as they come out and play their A game or even their B+ game. I think they should handle them pretty well. But gosh, what was my Caruso. So Alex Caruso, he's not gonna light it up on the scoreboard, right? He's only averaging 6 points a game. He's a smart player, makes smart passes. He's got a good steal rate as far as taking the ball from their team. Good defensive player. He would kind of fit the GP2 mold without, which is an important part of this, without the dunker spot, right? Because that was also what made GP2 valuable.
Caruso
but he
does
doesn't.
He's
not
kind of
as
an
well.
athlete, I thought.
Yeah, but not as well, right? Like,
yeah, not as well.
He's because that was what made GP sort of unique, is just this amazing ability to just rise like so quickly. So Caruso makes about $9 million a year. So if the Warriors would trade for him, they would have to make those salaries match. But you're not a fan of this. You don't think that Caruso is a good enough player for the Warriors to go, hey, we got Moses Moody. You'd have Caruso for this year and the following 2 years, I believe, is what his contract is.
Are you looking that up?
No, that's what it is. Yeah. This year and then 2 more years.
So just to let everyone know, the trade proposal you're referring to is from the Bill Simmons podcast, and Bill said that the Warriors should trade for Caruso and trade Moses Moody and Dante DiVincenzo.
Yes.
I think that, another very small side tangent, I think Bill's 100% correct on the whole Bulls thing. The Bulls own their pick, top 4 protected. So if they, end up with the 5th pick, I think who gets it? Oh, the Magic. God, what a trade. The Bulls have like no real aspirations, even when healthy, that like I think they could even be a contending team. So I'm with Bill and like blow it up, get rid of DeMar, get rid of Vucevic if you can, and just see how much assets you can get. Sell high on DeRozan for what he did last year. He's probably going to fetch you a decent amount. So I would totally do what he's doing and do what he said to do and just blow it up. But with Moses Moody, it's just like I just have an attachment, man. I see what he could be, and I think what he could be combined with, I think what he could be is better for this team in the long run than what Caruso could be right now. Because I think Caruso is excellent. I think that he brings a similar isolation defender that GP2 was. I think GP2 was the better, like, okay, stick him on a guard and that guard's like gonna have a really tough night. Yep. I think Caruso's like that too, but just to a smaller extent. I think Caruso's better at the team defender, playing the passing lanes better than GP2 did. GP2 is kind of just like, just throw him on the guy. That guy's gonna have a really tough night.
Yeah.
And that'll be it. I think Kuminga is like kind of coming into that role. Kuminga is someone who I think can guard 1 through 4, has a tough time on some 5s, most 5s. And I think he could play that GP2 role, which is like stick him on a guy, play the dunker spot. Like I honestly think that could be Kuminga's role. So I think Kuminga taking the GP2 role and Moses Moody becoming into this 3-and-D guy that I think he could be, that package is better in the long term than Caruso and Kuminga kind of playing the GP2 role. If that
so
makes
I think
sense.
The risk here is that in 2 years, Moses Moody is somebody who you want on an 8-man rotation, right?
On a championship team, I think Moses Moody's skill set and who he could be in 2 years is definitely like 7th or 8th at the very least.
The reason why I think it's an interesting trade is because while that risk exists, the flip side is you have DiVincenzo on this 1 year 4.5. You're losing DiVincenzo anyways, right? You're not bringing him back. So you'd get Caruso for this year plus 2 more years. He's in the rotation. He's in the rotation with Jordan Poole, with Kuminga, with Draymond, and whoever that other players, whether it's Anthony Lamb or whether it's JaMychal or whomever, and you solidify that second unit, even if it's by inches, right? That second unit just becomes tighter. It defends better. And thus you give this current team this year the better chance to win ball games. And you're risking what happens to Moody in 2 or 3 years, and if then he blossoms and you lose him. So that's
Yeah, I
the
mean,
risk.
if that's the mindset, if that's the mindset, and I don't disagree with that mindset, then boom, Wiseman for Jakob Poeltl, straight up, boom, Moody and DiVincenzo for Caruso, boom, Kuminga for name a guy. Like I'm sure
Is
there's someone who can help more than.
Is Jakob Poeltl gonna stay on the floor in a big game?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. We actually talked about it on our podcast too. Wiseman for Poeltl. I just think that, you know, I actually your guy Ethan Strauss was talking to Sam from Light Years on a pod.
Oh yeah, I haven't listened to that.
I've been listening to it. It's pretty good so far. You know, they're talking about what is it, the sunk cost fallacy?
Yeah.
On how like even TK, like my guy TK, man, me and him have just been riding the development guys. You know, we love those guys. TK kicked the tires on Wiseman, man. He did it right in front of our own eyes on the Warriors Plus Minus pod, and they're kind of bringing that up on Ethan's pod. And I just am not ready to kick the tires when I think that Wiseman's value right now, like they're kind of saying, dish him now. I'm thinking that he can, I think his value is at an all-time low. I think there's a chance it can go up. And if you want to do it, then do it. But I'm just still like, don't want to entirely kick the tires.
Yeah. But, and they think that it could actually get worse, right? Like that's kind of,
I think they do think that.
Yeah.
I just think that, I think that in the like I think Wiseman and Kuminga's value were probably better going into the season than not Wiseman.
Oh yeah.
Kuminga and Moody's value were better. So like I don't like selling low, I guess.
Yeah, if you do sell Wiseman right now, you are selling low 100%.
Like if we're talking about Wiseman for Jakob Poeltl straight up, and like Jakob Poeltl's the better player, but like Jakob Poeltl's a unrestricted free agent, you know, like that's just like the ultimate sell. You know, versus what it was going into this year or even last year, that's like selling $1 to like.
Well, you know who's also a free agent? Big Jim in 2 years.
Yeah.
So that's also another, because they've already picked up Wiseman. Did they pick him up for this year or next year? I don't remember
next
how that
year.
worked. Okay, so
12.9 next year, right? And Tim and Marcus and Anthony are saying that that's a 7 or 8 times multiplier. That's why they think they should need. I don't know if you kind of heard plus minus, but they were saying that Tim thinks it's inevitable that they're getting rid of him because he's realizing if you keep Wiseman, you can't keep Draymond, is what he's saying.
Mm-hmm.
So like they're realizing now, like this can't be the end of Draymond on the Warriors. Like he's just too good and he's too important to this team moving forward. So I think they think Wiseman's just like the oddball out because of it.
Yeah, that is going to be an interesting negotiation because
has someone got the cameras rolling for this documentary?
Like Draymond's feelings going to be hurt. That's my thing. All right, so yeah, we're done. I know we went a little bit over time, but we were talking a lot Mavs and so that's why. But yeah, so Warriors play Chicago and Houston this weekend. I'm guessing they're not going to play everyone on the back-to-back against Houston.
Oh, it's a back-to-back.
So that game could get funky. I think it's Friday, Saturday, at home for the Warriors. Let's see, what'll
show if this Warriors team is back is if they load the front end on the back-to-back, play everyone, back-to-back, Clay, Wiggins, Steph, Draymond sits, and they win it. Like if they win that game, you know, like they did last year against the Spurs, like the boys are back.
Yeah, because so it's Friday against the Bulls, 7:00, Saturday at 5:30 against the Rockets. You could probably find half decent ticket for that game. I'm going to imagine on a Saturday night.
It's not here though, is it?
Yes, it is.
Is it Chase?
It is at Chase. Their next 3 games are at Chase, and then Monday, Pacers. That's another game that you can probably
I'm interested in all of them.
To. So yeah, should be that. I mean, should be 3 wins, but that Rockets game on the back-to-back, they may just completely lose that one and make sure that they're ready for the Pacers. The Pacers are still 12-9, so even though they got killed by Sacramento, they're still 12-9.
And I mean, the Warriors have lost 1 game at home, like against Denver in the beginning of the season. Like, have they lost another game at home since?
I think that's it.
Yeah, they got.
I think they're just the one. All right, so What else on the BAM this week?
Just good guy stuff.
What does that even mean?
That means I just couldn't think of anything on the top right there. We put out a pod yesterday. Ben Simmons resurgence, James Wiseman a little bit, and then like Tyrese Halliburton revisiting that trade because they played yesterday. Good stuff. We'll record again on Sunday.
All right, so we're done here. We'll be back next week with hopefully some W's. I want to see this team kind of get some space between the wins and the losses on the records here. So, all right. So for me and Brian, we'll see you when we see you next week. Peace out.